Professional video editors can make great directors, and that's something that's been proven time and time again in the past, where if you really understand the editing process and you know how to edit, it will just help set you up for success and become a better director if you ultimately choose to enter the world of directing. And that's actually something that I talk about a lot on this channel. My whole channel is framed around this concept of if you really understand the editing process and the mechanics of what makes a good edit, it will help you make better movies. I myself, I've been a professional video editor for the past 8 years, and one of my big goals in life is also to be a director. If I had kind of like a dream of my career, it would be to both edit and direct. And I've done a little bit of directing in my life so far. When I was in college, I wrote and directed a feature-length film. I thought it was going to be like the big, Sundance breakout, and it was not. It was a very flawed movie, but I learned a lot about filmmaking by making that movie. And that project in itself was fundamental in me becoming a professional editor because I was editing the movie myself, and by doing that, I fell in love with the editing process and how you can really shape a movie in the edit. And since then, I've made a couple short films. I think total I've made about 6 short films, and the last short film that I directed was 2 years ago. And now I'm going to be directing a short film this weekend. The whole reason I talk about this is because I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about directing my short film. And I've been trying to understand why. Because on one hand, I feel like I should be confident by now, right? I've edited many different projects, different type of projects, and I'm very confident in my instincts as an editor. So why would that not translate into directing? If, after all, knowing how to edit can make you a better director. And I think that comes from the fact that, yes, understanding the editing process will make you a better director, but that doesn't mean that understanding the editing process will make you a great director. Does that make sense? There's a difference. And the difference is, if you are a director and you know how to direct, by understanding thoroughly the editing process as well, you will be a better director. But if you don't really know the mechanics of directing, which is its own craft, knowing the editing won't fix all of those problems. Knowing how to edit will help, but it doesn't mean you're going to pull off a great movie. And so that, I think, is where the inner conflict is coming and the insecurity is coming from with me. I understand the editing, and I'm very confident that I will edit the best version of the film that I will capture. But there's some trepidation about whether or not what I capture is actually going to make a great movie. And all of that, I think, ironically, is coming from my experience as an editor. Because I have seen so many projects where directors have fallen into pitfalls again and again, and I've been the one trying to fix those issues, it only makes sense that my brain immediately goes to, oh my God, are you going to do that to yourself? Are you going to fall into those same mistakes? And I also think that the brain of an editor is kind of overstimulated by default. Editors spend a lot of time on their own, staring at a computer screen, staring at hours and hours of footage, going over the same footage over and over again until it's perfect. This, I think, leads to overstimulation, and that overstimulation, I think, kind of creates anxiety for an editor. And I think I'm taking that same anxiety and bringing it to the film set, because that overstimulation means that my brain is constantly thinking about the worst case scenario. It's constantly worried that I'm going to do something during production that's not going to be correctable in post. Right? There's that whole fix it in post mentality that I personally always kind of rebel against, because I really don't think that a shit ton can be fixed in post. I think things can be improved in post. But if a director messes up production and doesn't get the footage that they need to make a good movie, the editor is not going to be able to fix that. And so I think automatically, because I am an editor and because I'm always in the problem-solving seat, now I'm feeling the pressure that I've put upon myself to not create problems for my editor self during production. And that's the other element of this, is that editors are not only overstimulated, but they are also perfectionists. At least I'll speak for myself. When I'm editing something, I will edit a 30-second segment for hours and hours on end until I feel like it feels right. I'll just go over it over and over and over. And that's something that you can do when you're editing because you kind of have the time. I have pulled all-nighters before trying to get a scene to work. And I have not gone to bed until it's worked. And that's a comfort, weirdly, that I have with editing, is that if things aren't singing immediately, that's fine. I will keep working on them until they're singing. But when you're directing, you don't have that luxury. You're on a set, you have a schedule, you have to be done at a certain time. You cannot obsess over something for too long or until it feels quote unquote right. At some point, you have to make the executive decision to move on. And I think that's another reason why I have a little bit of anxiety is because, oh gosh, what if it's not feeling right in the moment, but I don't have time to keep perfecting it, to keep obsessing over it? Like directing requires an understanding, I think, that things might not go perfectly. And you have to accept that and know what are the right calls to make. What is worth another take and what is worth just moving on. And that side of the directing experience is so different from how I approach editing that I think naturally I worry that I'm going to try to spend too much time on one thing and lose sight of the bigger picture. Now, of course, this is why we do very thorough pre-production as much as we can. And I am as prepped as I can possibly be. I have a very thorough shot list. I know what to prioritize. I know which shots I absolutely need to get and which ones I can do without if I am running low on time. So I've done the preparation, but I think there's just a little part of like my editor brain that's out of his comfort zone when I'm in a situation where I don't get to obsess over things for too long and I just have to keep moving and accept that that's the best that I can do in the moment. And that's the other side to this too, is because of the perfectionism element of my editing style, when I deliver an editing project to a client, I always know, for the most part, that that is the best representation of me as an editor. Because I know and I'm confident in the fact that I've worked it until it feels right to me. Sometimes I'm not always granted that luxury. If I have a very tight turnaround, I won't have that same feeling. But more often than not, I'm able to spend enough time on a project, work late nights, whatever I have to do, until it feels right and kind of clicks into place. So there's a level of satisfaction that comes from that I kind of worry I won't have in directing. Because directing, you're always a little bit at the mercy of what happens on the shoot day. You can be as prepared as you want, plan for all of the worst case scenarios as possible, but you still don't know how the shoot day is going to go. Something unforeseen might happen. Or film shoots just in general are notorious for having complications. Things take way longer than you anticipated. You're constantly over schedule, over budget, whatever it is. So as a director, I feel like your end product is always a little bit of a compromise from where your vision actually is. Like you can have a very top level, crystal clear vision, but if things don't go right on the day, your end result is always going to be a negotiation. It's always going to be your vision minus whatever compromise you had to make. And because I'm only shooting for one day and I won't have time or the budget to really do reshoots, I have to just accept that what I capture on the day is what I capture, and it might not be what my vision originally was. Doesn't mean it's going to be a bad movie. Doesn't mean where I land won't be any good. I hope it will be. But there is that risk that it's going to be a compromise from where I started. And that is, you know, a challenging thing, especially when you're financing the movie, right? You're self-financing the project. You want to hopefully pay for your top tier vision, but that's not always the guarantee. So you might end up with something that's a compromise that you paid the same amount of money for, and that's just an element that I think just adds a little bit of pressure, a feeling of pressure or feeling of tension. So those are really like the big reasons I think that I'm feeling nervousness and anxiety leaving the editing world and stepping into directing. Even though I have done it before, it's still something that I face every time. And so I just kind of wanted to talk about it. Hopefully this can be helpful to any editor that is considering directing. You know, I think these are the things to just be aware of and expect for when you do make that transition into directing. But then I also hope this video can be helpful to filmmakers out there or aspiring filmmakers to really understand how directing is very much its own craft, separate from editing. And knowing how to edit will make you a better director. But if you don't know the fundamentals of directing, or you haven't prepared yourself to be the best director you can be on a film set, knowing how to edit won't compensate for all those issues. It'll give you a little something, but directing is very much its own discipline that has its own mindset to master that is different from editing. So there we have it. That's all I have for today. I'm going to keep prepping for the short film. I am ultimately very excited for it, despite the, you know, fears and anxieties that one may have. But on this channel, I'm going to be sharing more about the film. I'm going to be hopefully capturing some behind the scenes of the film whilst I'm there, just to show a little bit of the process. I might do a little bit of a vlog type video where I'll post what it was like to shoot this film from my lens as an editor, being a director on a set. And then hopefully I'll be able to kind of share some peeks into my editing process of the movie. I'm going to be editing myself. So, you know, hopefully there will be some videos that I can make just sharing problem solving in the edit, things like that. So hopefully a lot more film related content on this channel to come. But thank you so much for watching. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.